Hey, what's going on, everyone? Back with another knife overview. Today we are going to be looking at the Curtis Custom Knives F3 Large. I'm really excited to kind of show you guys this one. I recently got it in. I did purchase this one. This is going to be the kind of the pouch that it comes with, so really nice zipper pouch there. And then they also, for one reason or another, back in 2017, they actually gave you the largest COA in existence. So, we're going to go over kind of my impressions of this knife. I am familiar with the F3 knife as far as like a F3 medium goes, but this was my first crack at a large. I really didn't see too many of these come up very often, but we'll get into that. But before we get started, we'll go into the specs. So the F3 large is going to feature a 4-inch blade. It's going to be 8.75 inches overall. Closed, it is 5 inches. This is going to be a full frame titanium knife. The version that I have is a CTS XHP blade. The style, so this is going to be like a Wharncliffe. Really do like the design of this blade. I think it's really sharp. It also features a very deep stonewash. They actually call it blackwash, which that is on the blade as well as the handles. And it is so dark to the tune of you really can't make out very well unless you're, under light like this, the F3, and then, the Curtis knives on the back. So I do like the blackwash as it's called, but thought that was kind of interesting. This does weigh a very hefty 6.5 ounces. It's going to be set up for right hand tip up only. The action is going to be running on bearings. The MSRP from what I could find is around $700, and this is going to be made in the US of A. This model that I have, so I kind of think the F3 larges are a little bit more rare. Like, to be honest with you, the F3 mediums are much more kind of ubiquitous than the larges, but I'd kind of thought that just from the last year of being on knife forums and on Facebook. But I went on eBay and there are actually a ton of F3 larges. So I will still say that the F3 medium is much more common. This one, like I said, is actually going to be from 2017. And one of the interesting distinctions that I noticed about the older ones as opposed to the newer ones is all the new ones kind of have a blood groove on them, whether they are a flipper or not. So my F3 medium that I have, although it does not have a flipper tab, you're going to have this blood groove. That's where it says F3 and then Curtis on the back. The older style ones, whether they were, flipper or not, did not have that blood groove in there. So that was one of the things that kind of, I don't know, it sets this one apart and makes it a little bit different, I think. Before we get into my observations, I wanted to go over a couple of quick comparisons, realizing that, I mean, with a 4-inch blade, this thing is like the big dog, like the higher end of folding knives that we see and that I own. So with that, the F3 large as compared to an F3 medium looks like that. Keeping in mind that the F3 medium has a 3.25 inch blade as opposed to the 4-inch. And then other big dogs kind of in my collection. This one I pulled out because it does have that like shark tooth, or I forget what the blade shape is called from Demco, but this is going to be a Demco 8020. So F3 large is actually, it kind of towers over even a Demco 8020, which by all accounts is a very large knife. And then finally, the other kind of big daddy in my collection, if I had one, you could certainly compare this to a Hinder XM24. It's definitely on that level, but here it is as compared to a Strider SMF. Looks like that. So very, very similar in size, but way heavier. We'll see with the Curtis. So with that, we're going to go through my observations real quick, and yeah, we'll wrap it up from there. Thanks for tuning in. All right, my first observation of the F3 large is going to be, this is a BFK, or a big freaking knife. As we saw before, this thing totally dwarfs the F3 medium. I'll get it out again just because I have it here. I mean, this is going to be a very, very large knife, and I do like the size, but it just it may not be for everyone. We look at this knife, it is going to be a full frame titanium knife, and again, this thing weighs 6.5 ounces. And in any full frame titanium knife, it's never going to be a featherweight. And with no internal cutouts, relief, milling, this thing is just a beast. Like when it is in your hand, you are like, I have a purpose built tool in my hand. I mean, the thing's absolutely a paperweight. The next observation that I had, and again, my F3 medium does not have the flipper tab, but I did notice from when Devin let me borrow his F3 medium that they carry over the exact same size flipper tab as the medium. So on this model, I do think that it's a little bit more proportional. That was one of my comments from the F3 medium flipper, was just that the flipper tab was just like, I mean, you could hit that thing in the dark, wet hands, gloves on, whatever. I like the proportions that the flipper tab has with the rest of the knife a lot better on the large version. The next observation that I had was I really do love the Wharncliffe design that Curtis puts on this knife. A lot of the ones, again, the F3 medium, that's going to be that Spanto grind, so you kind of get those two separate angles. But I think from like a sharpening standpoint, this is going to be a joy, just because you have one flat plane to sharpen. And now that I'm more into sharpening ever since I got my Wicked Edge, that's definitely something that appeals to me. And I think this is going to be a very straightforward knife to sharpen. The next observation that I had of the F3 large is going to be the fact that there is no proprietary hardware on here. And, you can actually go so far as to get a Curtis tool that kind of fits into these holes to work the pivot. Although a lot of people in the feedback that I've received just say that hand tightening this really meets the mail and there's no need to over tighten it. And, one of the things that I recently reached out to Curtis with was the fact that the previous owner of my medium, I mean, I don't know what they used. Like maybe they got one of those like glasses screwdrivers from the checkout counter at the grocery store to try to turn this thing, but it is just scratched to hell. And then there's no need for that. One of kind of the defining characteristics as far as aesthetics go with this knife is going to be this oversized pivot. And the only reason that they do that is that they've integrated, and again, I covered this in the F3 medium, but they integrated the over travel, so the stop for the lock bar, in with the pivot. So I know it's not for everyone, but it certainly is very recognizable and unique to Curtis knives. The next observation that I had was the pocket clip, and I will say I'm warming up to the design on the pocket clip, realizing that this reticle is going to be Curtis's design, but like the medium, these are going to be the exact same size pocket clips, and this is a substantially heavier knife. And I did notice, I don't know if you can equate it to just the age, but it is a little bit springy, and I think even if this was brand new, there's not much tension on this, and it is the exact same as the medium, but this one being a little bit more lightweight, it doesn't feel as like bouncy in your pocket or unsecure as this one, again weighing 6.5 ounces. I'm kind of surprised that they went with this pocket clip design. Like all the screws, they're kind of stacked on top of each other instead of spreading the load out. Kind of an interesting design. It's one of those things that time will tell. Right now, and again, I have about 2 days carrying this thing. It's not too bad of a pocket feel, but certainly the F3 medium and this one being a full frame titanium knife too, just a smaller package, definitely a lot more noticeable, and definitely think that that's worth noting. All right, the next observation that I had was the jimping, and I had said in my last Making Amends that sometimes, like if you have this in your pocket and you're reaching for something around this knife, this jimping really can kind of tear you up and get at you. I will say that it's a lot nicer on this one just because it's a wider frame, and there's wider jimping actually on the F3 medium. It does stick out kind of like almost the same, but certainly the F3 medium, the jimping on the back sticks out more. I'll try to post a picture of that, but there's not much jimping to speak of. I mean, you have a little bit on top of the knife, just like the F3 medium. It's actually the exact same length there. And then on the back, it's almost more recessed than it is on the F3 medium. So I think that this one will be a lot more comfortable to carry in your pocket if you're trying to reach around it. But that's just kind of interesting. I mean, at first blush, these look like they're, very similar, if not exactly the same. I mean, they share the same name, F3 medium. They're about 4 years apart in age. That's kind of interesting that this jimping on the back here is going to be more countersunk than the F3 medium, the newer version. All right, the last observation that I had for the Curtis F3 large is going to be the action. So again, this one is running on bearings, but this has a very, very weak detent. And if you look at it, I'll try to capture a picture of it. Proportionally, it is so small. Like the detent, I've never seen such a small ball detent, and like you feel it when you actuate the knife. I think a lot of people would be drawn to the action of this. Again, it's super smooth. Once you get that huge bulky blade rolling, I mean, this thing's smooth as heck, but it is very slam shut like the McNeese, but with what I would say a big boy blade that you're kind of risking. It always wants to like guillotine your finger, so you have to be very cognizant and conscious when you close this thing, because it definitely, like with all the mass behind it, if this closed on your finger, just the weight of the blade alone with how sharp this is, it would definitely do some damage. So I don't know, I may try to contact Curtis about that just to see if there's anything that can be done, because by all accounts, I mean, this thing, I know that there's drop shut, but this thing is definitely slam shut, and I would definitely like to see it a little bit more controlled. And honestly, that's my only gripe with this knife, is going to be that very weak detent. I don't know if it's just the one that I have or all Curtis F3 larges. And that concludes my overview of the Curtis F3 large. I'm very excited to get this one in my collection. Again, there's very few knives these days that I kind of see on the secondary market, and I'm like, oh man, I need to scoop that up. This was one of those, and I did get what I thought was a pretty fair price for it. Couldn't be happier with it. I think it's really great. There really is just, no getting around the fact that this is a very big knife, and by all accounts it's not nearly as popular as the medium, but surely this could go toe to toe with any of like the large heavy hitters from any brand, whether that's the XM24, Strider SMF, etc. And the cool thing about the Curtis kind of offering in this weight class is that it still retains that like refined yet overbuilt design that I've really come to love and expect from Curtis. And before we wrap this up, I just wanted to make one plug, because I think it is really cool. Again, this one's going to be made in the US, and I brought up that I was thinking about sending this Curtis F3 medium to kind of get this pivot cleaned up a little bit. The coolest thing about Curtis, and I can't foot stomp it enough with customer service or buying knives that are made in the US, I called Curtis, and I think this was like Monday or Tuesday. Today it's Wednesday, so yeah, it was Monday. David Curtis answers the phone, and I think that is so cool. And the more, and again, I'm into like really high-end stuff, whatever, like having that customer service and level of customer service, I think, is very rare these days, and I think it's awesome. Like the one-man shop that this guy makes knives out of, if you call Curtis Custom Knives, more oftentimes than not, the owner, the person who made your knife, will answer the phone. And I just thought that was really cool. And I'm looking forward to sending this medium in to get it cleaned up. And I think next time I call, I'll definitely be asking about the detent on the large. So with that, appreciate you all tuning in, and we will see you next time.